Hello dear students of class 9th, welcome to Polity class. I hope all of you are fit and healthy. Students, in this video, I shall be continuing with the second chapter from your Polity book, that is Constitutional Design. Students, in the previous video, I gave you an introduction about this chapter and also explained you regarding the situation of South Africa before the independence of South Africa, that what was the situation that was prevalent in South Africa. I explained you that there were basically two major groups that were living in South Africa. The first were the blacks and the second were the whites, and the blacks were discriminated, they were dominated by the whites. Why they were dominated, why they were discriminated? Because of a racial discrimination that was there in South Africa, which is called as apartheid, in which the blacks were discriminated because of their skin color, since they were black in color, they were not fair enough. So on that ground they were discriminated and they were not given their rights, they were suppressed, they were humiliated by the whites, and also they were segregated. The policy of segregation was adopted for the blacks. They were not allowed to enter certain areas and they could only enter with the permission of whites if they were allowed. So they were humiliated a lot, the blacks were humiliated a lot. And also I told you about Nelson Mandela. He was imprisoned for 28 years because he was fighting against the whites. He wanted equality for everybody. So he was imprisoned by the white people. This I already explained you. Now students, I will be continuing that topic and I will be explaining you about the role of ANC. This is very important, role of ANC in ending apartheid in South Africa. Now what is the meaning of ANC, or what is the full form of ANC? ANC means African National Congress. So now I will explain you that how the African National Congress helped to remove apartheid in South Africa. Let me tell you students that African National Congress, ANC, it played a very vital role, it played a very important role in ending apartheid in South Africa. See, this was the party that was formed and it helped in ending apartheid. Now we will see that how this party helped in removing apartheid in South Africa. So students, since 1950, the blacks, colored and Indians, they fought against the apartheid system. They were fighting against the whites because they were discriminated. The policy of segregation was adopted for them. So they launched protests, marches and strikes. Means they were following the path of non-violence. They were not doing violence. So they were very peacefully, they were protesting, they were doing marches and they were doing strikes in order to end, in order to remove the system of apartheid that was there in South Africa, because that system was really very humiliating, that was very torturous. So it had to end in some or the other way. So in order to remove that, in order to end that, this party, that is ANC, the people of ANC, they were very peacefully, they launched protests, marches and strikes. Students, let me tell you that the ANC, that is African National Congress, it was the umbrella organization that led the struggle against the policies of segregation. Now why is this ANC called as umbrella organization? See, what is the work of umbrella? To save people from rain, it saves us from rain. So similarly, this ANC, African National Congress, it was acting as an umbrella. That means it was protecting people. It brought people under one roof, under one organization, a collective organization that led the struggle against the policies of segregation. And then what happened? As protests and struggle against apartheid had increased, the government realized that they could no longer keep the blacks under their rule through repression. So, because of increase in number of strikes, because of increase in number of struggle against apartheid, there were several protests and everything, means everything was going on in a proper systematic manner. There was no violence, there was non-violence. The policy of non-violence was adopted. And as these things, these protests were going on, as they were increasing, so it had put, so these protests, these strikes, they had put pressure on the government, and then the government realized, that means the white government, they realized that they could no longer keep the blacks under their control. They could no longer repress, they could no longer suppress the whites. And then what happened? What was the impact of this? What was the impact of the struggle? The impact was, or it resulted in, the independence of South Africa from the discriminatory system. And then finally what happened? The government realized that now they could not keep the blacks under their control. They could not discriminate, they could not dominate the blacks. They could not follow the policy of segregation. Now they had to give the blacks their right. Now they cannot be discriminated, they cannot be dominated anymore. So what happened? This struggle led to the independence of South Africa from the discriminatory system or the apartheid system. So this way South Africa got freedom. And then what happened? Then the white regime changed its policies. Now how the policies were changed? See, the discriminatory laws were repealed. Repealed means to cancel, means no longer they were valid. Earlier discriminatory laws were there, that means the blacks were discriminated from the whites on the basis of skin color. That means racial discrimination was there in South Africa. But now that means after the freedom, after South Africa got its freedom, now the discriminatory laws were automatically cancelled. That means they were no longer valid. That means that discrimination was not there after the independence. After the blacks got independence, cut that line. After the blacks were independent from the whites' rule. Also students, there were ban on several political parties and cut that line. Also students, ban on political parties and restrictions on the media were lifted. Means earlier there were restriction on the media, there was ban on several political parties. That means the blacks, they could not form their own political parties. There were restriction on the media, that the media will not support the blacks. So these restrictions were there. But once South Africa got freedom, once South Africa got its independence, these restrictions and bans, they were lifted. And then after 28 years of imprisonment, what happened? Nelson Mandela, he walked out of prison as a free man. Earlier he was not free. Earlier he was dominated by the whites, but now after the freedom, after South Africa got freedom, Nelson Mandela, he walked out of the prison as a free man. And let me tell you that Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. That means he really worked very hard for the struggle of South Africa. He remained in prison for 28 years and after that he became the president of South Africa. He was the first black president of South Africa. And this way, the apartheid government or the apartheid system came to an end, paving way for the formation of a multiracial government. Now, what do you understand by this term multiracial government? Multiracial means which consists of not only one race but several races. For example, not only whites but also blacks. That means multiracial means people of several races, not only the whites but the blacks also, the colored people also. And let me tell you that South Africa later came to be emerged, cut that line. And let me tell you students that after the independence of South Africa, it emerged or it came to be known as a rainbow nation. Why the rainbow nation? See, a rainbow has so many colors, it has 7 colors. Similarly, in South Africa, one party did not dominate or rule. There were several parties that dominated. Cut that line. So, similarly in South Africa, there was not the rule of only one party or only one group of people. There were several groups of people that ruled in South Africa. That means the blacks plus the whites as well as the colored people. So, this way South Africa got its independence and it emerged as a rainbow nation. So, I hope that how South Africa got its freedom is clear to everybody. How the system of apartheid ended in South Africa is clear to everybody. Now, students, in South Africa, nobody was dominating, nobody was single ruler, nobody was the ruler, nobody was the slave. Everybody were in or everybody was in power. So, this was there in South Africa. Now, students, as South Africa got its freedom, now there was one more question. That means the drafting of constitution. That means how will the constitution be drafted so that nobody is discriminated on any grounds. See, earlier the earlier the whites dominated over the blacks. Now, the whites feared that the same condition may repeat. That means the blacks may dominate over them. So, there was a need of constitution. Constitution means a set of written rules and regulations of a nation or of a country. Only verbal rules are not enough when it comes to running a country. There has to be a set of written rules and regulations that must be followed by everybody. So, after the independence of South Africa came the question of the Constitution of South Africa, that how the Constitution of South Africa should be designed. So, students, in the next video, I shall be explaining you about the constitutional design of South Africa. That means how the Constitution of South Africa was drafted. What points were kept in mind while drafting or writing the Constitution of South Africa. Till then, thank you so much and stay safe.